Hey everyone, and welcome to the final chapter for this XGen tutorial. In this chapter, we're going to go over creating shaders for the hairs, and then doing some renders and making sure that their thickness and length and densities are all working the way we want them to, because sometimes looking at them here in the viewport, they might look like they're working quite well, but it's not until you render them with the shader assigned that you find out like what's actually going on. So my primary rendering software with Maya is Arnold, and there's some free shaders. Well, and the cool thing is that Arnold now ships with the latest version of Maya in Maya 2017. And there are these shaders that I really have enjoyed using recently, which are called AL shaders. There's a website here, and they're open source and they're free to download. So you just go to downloads, and then you can install these and set them up on your system, and then you'll have full range of them. So yeah, you just read through this stuff and install them for whatever you're using, OS, Windows, Linux, and yeah, they've been fantastic. So this is an example of the hair here. We can go to reference, we can go to reference surfaces AL hair, and you can see that you can see here that it gives quite a nice result for hair. And so this is the shader that I've been using for rendering my hair. So yeah, just if you want to follow along with this tutorial, you can go grab these shaders and yeah, we'll see what we can make. So back to Maya. So I'm going to bring up the Hypershade here. I've opened up a new tab and I'm going to type in AL hair over on the side. And we're going to create two hair shaders. It's just a bit slow loading these in. So I've got the property editor over here. Now I'm going to name this shader Peach Fuzz Shader. Peach Fuzz shader, and then this one is just going to be hair shader. Okay, cool. So with the Peach Fuzz, first of all, I know that I'm going to want the melanin at 0. So we'll just leave it like that for now, and we'll need to make some more adjustments, but I'll do a render first and see what needs to be changed. And then the hair shader, I think we'll leave it default for now, just so you guys can see what it renders at default. So then I can open up the outliner here, and then I can select everything but Peach Fuzz and assign, right click and assign that, and then click on the Peach Fuzz and right click and assign this one. Now when I minimize this, you'll notice all the hairs have gone black, and that's just how the viewport visualizes the AL hair shader. So I keep it on the other one while I'm building the hair, because it gives me, it shows a bit of specular roll off and stuff like that, and gives me a better understanding of what the hair is actually doing. So I've set up a camera already. It's a low angle camera just to try and make the giant feel a lot bigger, just because we're looking up at him. And we can see all the hair here, which is looking cool. And so now I've also created, wait, what is this? Spreadsheet, don't want that. Alright, I've also created a light rig. So if I go to lights here and cameras and Shift H to make them visible, and now if I go back to perspective view, you can see all it is a key light and then 2 fill lights and a HDRI. So now I can go back to my camera, and I've put a basic gray shader on for his skin, just because the SSS render just takes so long. I will be doing a final SSS render at the end just to make sure that the hair looks okay or looks good on the skin shader. So yeah, we'll open up the render window, and then we'll make sure our settings are okay. So when rendering in Arnold, I've set it to 2K square. You can set this to whatever dimensions you want, but that's just what I've used. And then Arnold Renderer, I've set the AA samples to 3, the rest to 1, and SS is on 2 for when I was rendering with subsurface scattering, but there's no subsurface scattering in these current renders, so that's not a big deal. And then ray depth, I've set diffuse to 1, glossy to 1. We're not using any reflection, so that's set to 0. And there's some refraction in the eyeballs, so I've set that to 2. And 1 plus 1 plus 2 equals 4, so that's what the total is. I've left this stuff the same. And then under system, I like to set this to random and bucket size of 32. So just as a rundown of what I adjust to make sure that my renders aren't too noisy but aren't too slow. So yeah, this should be fine. And in the options here, I got my test resolution at the moment it's at full res, but I might go to 50% just for this first render to speed it up a bit. So let's go ahead and render. This is just processing all of my textures from TIFF to TX format, making sure that they're all TX'd. Otherwise it won't render. This will take a little bit of time to pre-process because of primarily all the peach fuzz hairs. So once we get the peach fuzz hairs looking good, we should be able to just hide them, and then this pre-processing won't take as long, but it's just got to load in all the hairs for the render, and it'll just take a bit of time. So I'm going to pause the render here and then come back once it's done. Okay, so the render's complete. It's a little low res, so we've got a lot of noise in the peach fuzz hair and also in the other hair too, so it's a bit grainy, but it's enough to be able to see what's going on. Now, I'm not a big fan of the default blonde hair which is happening here, so that's probably going to be the first thing I'm going to change. And the peach fuzz is a little too intense, like it's too visible. Like if you look at reference of peach fuzz, you primarily see it on the silhouette and where the object is falling off the surface, where the hairs are like falling off like around a surface. So like I'd expect them to see them here, but I wouldn't expect to see them here. And I'd expect to see them a bit here, but not like in these regions or this region. So yeah, we'll go in and make some adjustments. Just minimize this, bring open the hypershade again. Okay, so first of all, the peach fuzz. Let's see. So to reduce the effect, we can bring down the diffuse to 0, because that's, I'm pretty sure that this is due to the hair actually being colored white, whereas I primarily just want the specular affecting the visibility of the hairs. So that should bring down a lot of them from appearing on these flatter regions of the face. And then the highlight width, if we increase this, so we'll take this up to like 0.7, and if you read on that website I was showing you before, that like all this is information on like what all the settings do and stuff like that, and it says in there that the highlight width should be roughly half of what the highlight shift is. So we'll set that up to about 4. And so that's going to diffuse them a bit, because I don't want them to have a really tight specularity on the peach fuzz. Now if we go to the other hair, what we can do is we can make the melanin. Now the melanin will change the color of the hair basically for a natural color. 0 is white hair and 1 is black hair. So 0.5 will be like more of a brown. And yeah, well, I guess we'll just see how that looks. Maybe we'll go 0.7 because I want it to be a bit of a darker type of hair. Now you can see, I'm not sure if you guys can see, but there's a very, very subtle red tint in this hair. And if you have a rim fill light here, it tends to blow out the hairs with a little bit of redness, which to me, it doesn't look that natural. So that might be something that we'll have to either reduce or remove. So we'll go back to the renderer, and what I'm going to do here actually is I'm going to go to the render globals, and I'm going to keep this the way it is. Actually, I'll do something different. I'll set the render resolution to a 2K res, which is what I've got it set to in my render globals, not 50%, just because I want to get more resolution in seeing what these hairs are actually doing. Yeah, so I'll set off another render at that resolution, and then we can go in and like do small sections of rendering just to, as we're adjusting the hairs, just to speed up the process a little bit. So once again, I'll do another render, and I'll pause the video so you guys don't have to sit here in silence, and then yeah, we'll see what our changes have done. So render camera 1, just going to process again, and I'll be back when it's done. Okay, so the render's just finished, and our peach fuzz is looking much better. See how it's less visible here, but it's visible where the hair is actually rolling off the surface and catching the light. Yeah, you can also see it here along the shoulder and here. So that's basically what I want to get out of the peach fuzz. And on the ears, it's very important. And here in the shadow of the bottom of the lip, it's picking up light where it's sitting in shadow, and that's basically the look that I'm going for. Now you can also see this reddish tint in the brown hair, but it's just a little too intense. I'm not a huge fan of it. So first of all, what I'm going to do to speed up my render times, now that I'm happy with how the peach fuzz is looking, I'm going to hide the peach fuzz, and then I'm going to go back in and adjust and try remove the red out of this hair. Now there are also some other things that I want to look into. Primarily the density of the beard I think could go up a bit, and this eyebrow, the silhouette on this eyebrow is looking a little strange, so I want to fix that up as well. But apart from that, looking at the eyelashes, they look like they may be a little... No, they should be okay. I think that just sitting on top of the grey here, they look a bit odd, but I'll see how they look once I have a skin shader on them. Yeah, so let us remove this red tint from the hair. You'll primarily see this when you're rim lighting your character or creature. So let's minimize this. We'll bring up the hypershade again. Now, this color is coming from two places. It's coming from the transmission and the diffuse. So first of all, let's remove it from the diffuse, and we'll see how much of an impact that has on our render. So let me open up, where am I? All right. So let me save this render so I have something to compare to. I should have saved the other render so I could have done a comparison, but anyway. And I just need to render out this portion just to see what happens. So make sure that's saved, which it is, and we will render. Now you can see that hasn't done much at all in the way of reducing the redness. So we'll try the transmission instead. You can also see there that the peach fuzz is disappearing because I hit it just to speed up render time. So I'll minimize this and we'll go back to the shader. We'll bring back the diffuse and we'll remove the transmission. Ooh, still says the strength there. Alright, there we go. So now we'll see how this looks. Save this one just in case and render. Okay, so the render's done. You can see here that by removing the transmission, we've removed that reddish tint to the hair, which is exactly what I wanted to achieve. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to update this eyebrow. So don't be afraid that like now you're at the point of rendering, like the hair's locked down, you can't make any more changes. You totally can. So don't be afraid to just come back in here, go back into perspective mode, come over here, and we can see that something's going on here that's really pulling it out. So we'll go to brow, and then I'm going to show the guides again, and you can see it looks like it's predominantly this guy. So we can grab him, go to utilities, modify his curve, and pull it in further. Hit accept, update, and there you go. It's pulled it back in. We'll go back to camera, and you can see that silhouette looks a little better. There's a little bit down here as well which is hanging out. We'll go to the render so we can have a better look at that. But yeah, this part here looks like it's coming off a different curve. So it looks like we've fixed this part but not this part. So now we'll have a look at that. So go back into perspective. Looks like this guy might be contributing to that, or both of these guys. So we'll modify the curve and we'll just pull him in a bit more. And this one, pull him in a bit more, accept. So that's now pulled that in. Let's have a look. And that to me is looking a little bit better. There's a bit of a hanging piece here now. So if we have a look from here, looks like it could possibly be this guy, but he looks pretty close to the surface, so maybe it's this guy. So modify his curve, pull him in a bit. Now this one, it looks like it needs a bit of an adjustment, so let's pull him out and then back down and then update. So the flow is actually looking pretty good on this hair, on the hairs. Let's have another look. Now there's a key on your keyboard. It's the key underneath the backspace key. It's backslash. So you can hold that down and use your navigating tools like your middle mouse click and your right mouse click, and you can actually zoom in on an area of your frame without having to move your camera. It's super handy when looking at details like this. But this is looking, I think this is looking much better than what it did before, so I'm pretty happy with this now. Next up was the beard density. So all we need to do is go over here to beard, and then primitives, and then density is currently at 50. Let's set it to 100 just to see what that does. 100 actually looks pretty good. I also want to have a play around with these masking tools that I set up. See what happens when we give it some more contrast. And now I want to adjust this. So this is just the breakup which I was generating. Just to try and add a bit more variation to this guy's beard. I don't know how much this is really helping, but any variation is good variation. Alright, let's see how this looks. So I'll go back here. Well, first we'll render the, well, we might as render the whole thing. Well, not the whole thing, but I'll just render the area of the beard and that eyebrow. Alright, so I'll save this and render again. Okay, so as you can see here, the eyebrow looks much better. Less stray hairs flying around. The beard I'm not so sure on. I kind of prefer, now seeing this, I kind of prefer the density of the previous beard. You can also see we're still picking up some reds in here. So I'm going to try kill the diffuse again and then just do a small render in this region just to see if that'll fix up. Oh, and this eyebrow looks really red. So that'll probably fix up that problem. But yeah, let's go back here and trim out some more of the beard. I want it to be a bit more scraggly, a bit more like less full. I also want to go to the modifiers here and go to noises. So that's doing the stray hairs, and this is adding just the general noise. Let's set the magnitude to 10 just to see what difference that makes. It gives it a bit more of a curly look. Let's try 7.5. 7.5. Maybe that's better. The frequency's at 0.25. Let's try 0.5. What if we have that at 0.5 and this at 5? No, it's too much. So let's go to let's try 0.1 and let's try 10. That doesn't look too bad. It's a bit weird up here. So let's go 7.5 again. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. So we'll try that out. Oh, and removing the redness in the hair, we will go to the hair shader and we'll kill the diffuse again. So now that's done, I'll do another render. I'll just do this same render, even though it takes a few minutes, just because I want to see the eyebrow. Well, actually, I don't really need to see the eyebrow, do I? Because I'll see this the update to the color in the beard itself. So that'll do. Alrighty, I'm gonna render and then I'll be back once it's done. I'll save this render and then do a new one. Okay, so now if we flick between these two, you can see we've lost a lot of that density that I was going for. But I think I prefer this more shaggy look. And I believe that we've also lost some of the redness. Just to confirm, I'm going to render this eyebrow because you can really see it in here. So I'll save this render and do this one. Yeah, so as you can see here, hasn't done a whole lot in helping reduce that. So maybe it's coming from somewhere else. Let's go back to the hypershade. Go back to the hair shader. I think what we'll do is I'll bring back the diffuse. Transmission's off, and I might turn off the dye color. I think that's where it's coming from, not the diffuse. So make that black, and we'll try again. Also gonna just I'm gonna go back to the brow and turn off the guides. Okay, so yeah, let's try that again. Save this render and render. And so as you can see, that has removed the redness. So it wasn't coming from the diffuse at all. It was coming from the dye color. But where the light passes through it from behind, it's coming from the transmission color. So if you don't like removing it completely, what we could do is go back to the hypershade, go to the dye color, and we could just set it at like 0.25 instead. Another thing that I've noticed is if I bring back the peach fuzz I think looking at this, it could probably be, we could probably change it a little. In the way, like the length I think might be a little too long, and the density could be a little higher. So with the peach fuzz visible, we'll go to peach fuzz over here. It's gonna just have to calculate the peach fuzz, because I had this set to auto refresh, so that'll just take a little bit of time. But once it's done, I'm gonna turn that off, just because it just takes too long to process. Alright, I think that's done. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to turn this auto update off. And so I said I wanted to increase the density, so I might set that to 5. And then the length, 0.75, yeah. Maybe, yeah, let me just look at the render again. Like, as I was saying earlier, he is meant to be a giant. And this length, it does seem to be okay. So maybe we'll leave the length as is. And then when it comes to the width, 0.01. Yeah, 0.01 seems pretty good, I guess. So we'll just leave it at that for now. Okay. So we'll come back here, and I want to see what the eyebrows look like now that I adjusted the dye color, and I also want to see how the density reacts on the peach fuzz. So I'm just going to render this portion here, and we will hit render, and then I'll pause the render so you don't have to wait. Okay, so this is the result of those last changes we made. I think the density of the peach fuzz is working a lot better than it was before. Their visibility seems a bit intense at this moment, but maybe that's just due to it being rendered on a plain gray surface. So I'm now going to do a render with my skin shader just to make sure that everything is kind of is all working together. So yeah, I'll run out that render now, and I'll come back once the render's complete, and we'll just oversee what the result looks like. Okay, so here he is now with the skin shader assigned. The peach fuzz is actually looking kind of cool down here, along his shoulder and stuff like that, but it looks a bit too visible up here on the forehead. So I got an idea of a couple of things we can do to reduce that. I think the beard actually looks quite good with the skin shader, so I'm pretty happy with that. The density of the hair on the side here looks a bit too much, and the density in the eyebrows also looks a bit too much. And the hair up the top looks okay, could be a bit finer, but yeah, that's basically what I'm getting from this. And the eyelashes may be a little too thick, but it's hard to say. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make some changes to these. So if we go to, let's start with the eyebrows. I'm gonna go into perspective mode. So we're under the hair brow. Now it was the density that I had a problem with, so let's go to 5. And then because this isn't set to auto update, we got to click it. So that looks like it might be a bit better, so I'll leave that there. Now the width of the hairs could be the issue, but they already look quite thin, so maybe it's not the width. The length could probably be brought down, so let's go to peach fuzz, and the length we'll set to 0.5. That might help our situation. The beard's fine. The hair on the side and on the top could come down a bit in density for the look that I'm going for. So density on the side could come down to maybe 7.5. And got to update that. And density on the top. Actually, let's see what a density of 5 looks like. I'll try that. because I want it to be quite thin, because he is balding, so I don't want it to be too thick of a mop of hair. Even though when we're viewing it from this angle, we're seeing a lot of hair here, like stacked on top of itself, whereas if we render like this, it's going to definitely give us a different representation. And then the hair on top, we'll set to 2.5, and then refresh that. And that's probably more of the wispy look that I'm going for here. So we can go back to camera 1, and I'll do another render, but I'll just do it of certain areas. I'm actually not a big fan of what's going on here in this eyebrow, so let's go back to brow. We'll show the curves and see what's going on here. So it looks like this one looks predominantly like the issue. So let's go modify curve, and we'll kind of reshape him. I want him to be, oh, not like that. I want him to be going up a bit, and that looks a bit better. Just filled it out a bit more. Okay, cool. So I can turn off curves in the brow. I'll go back to camera 1, and I will save this render, and then I'll do another render of the eyebrow. Well, actually, I'll do it of this whole upper area because that's what I've adjusted. So from here to here. So this will show us the length change in the peach fuzz, the density in the hair on his head, and the density in the eyebrows. No changes were made to the beard. So yeah, we'll see what this looks like. I'll be back once the render finishes. So I'll save this first and then render. Okay, so the render is finished, and we can flick between the two, and we can see the definite changes here. We're definitely getting a thinning out of the hair on top of his head, which I feel looks better. Also, the eyebrows are thinning out, and the length of the peach fuzz is diminishing. So yeah, those were all the things that we were trying to do, and it looks like they were pretty successful. The thickness of the hairs in the eyebrows are now troubling me, so maybe I'll bring them down. And the peach fuzz is still probably it's not too apparent. I actually quite like it. Like, I don't think it's realistic. It's a bit over exaggerated, because like looking back at that reference that I was showing you earlier, they weren't very visible at all. So I might attempt at bringing down their thickness a little bit as well, just to see what that gives us. But apart from that, like, you could tweak this, you could continue tweaking this over and over and over again, but you gotta find a point where you're gonna call it. And due to this being a tutorial, I don't want this to go on for too much longer. But I'll make these adjustments to the peach fuzz and the eyebrows and show you the result, but I think we'll probably leave it at that. Like, there are other things which are troubling me, like the shape of this eyebrow is kind of weird. I kind of want it to fold down a bit in this area so it doesn't have as much of a arc to it. But yeah, just things like that. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the result, but yeah. So let's go in and make those adjustments. So the brow, we've got a primitives, we've got density, we'll leave that. We've got width, so let's go 0.02. Just a very subtle change. And let's go to peach fuzz, and we'll get that width and make it 0.005 and make that adjustment. And like, we lost a bit of length. I'm not sure if the length change is helping or not. I think it is, yeah. It definitely looks a lot more intense in the previous render. So we'll leave the length as is. But yeah, okay, with those changes made, I'm going to do one more render, just of this region here. And yeah, I'll come back and we'll have a look at the results. Actually, I want to get that whole eyebrow in. There we go. Yeah, and we'll look at the results and then leave it at that. So yeah, I'll render this out now. I'll save first and then render now. Okay, here's the result. And I think we've definitely landed on a winner for the peach fuzz. It's less apparent, but it's still definitely there. And the eyebrows, I think if we look at this from a distance, before they were just too intense, but now I think they're sitting in place a lot better. Yeah, see, before he looks a bit like a Muppet. They're just sticking out too much. But now they're blending in with his skin a lot better just by thinning them out. May end up doing the same to the eyelashes because they seem a bit thick. And possibly the head hair and beard hair. Like if we zoom in on the beard, you can actually, like, the strands do look pretty thick. So what I might do is I will make similar width adjustments to the hair and the beard and the eyelashes, and then I'll do a full render just to give you guys an overall look, because like we've only seen the peach fuzz updated here. We haven't seen it updated on the ear or in any other place. So yeah, I might make those changes. I'll do another full render. I'll quickly show you at the end, and then and we'll call that it. So I'll be back in a sec once I make those changes. Okay, so this time I reduced thickness of the hairs in the beard, the eyelashes, the hair on his head, and I increased the thickness just slightly on the eyebrows because I felt like they might have gone down a bit too much. I am also now getting the same feeling from the hair on his head. So I may bring that back. I think I'll bring that back to where it was before. I'm happy with the eyelash update. I'm happy with the eyebrow update. I'm happy with the beard. Is the beard changing? It's hard to tell. It should be. The beard thickness was changed. Yeah, you can see it just. Yeah, there's a little bit of change going on there. But I think the beard's good. Let's have a look down here. Yeah, you can see it here in the silhouette. Okay, so I know I said this will be my last render like 2 renders ago, but I just thought I should do a smaller render before doing the whole thing, just to be 100% sure. And I'm glad I did, because yeah, the hair doesn't look very good at this point. So I'll fix that up and do another render. Let's go to hair head 2. And the width we'll set to it was at 0.02, so I guess we'll go back to that thickness. And hair head 1, 0.02. And that should be fine. I think with that update, we should have something pretty solid. Now, like 0.01 with an increased density of hairs, like an increased number of hairs, may look better, but at this stage I'm pretty sure that this is gonna look fine for what I'm going for. And the peach fuzz looks really good. Like we can just see it very subtly smattering on the lower lip here and in the beard. So yeah, I think that's working better as well. Check it on the ear. Yeah, so you can see the before and after there. It's pretty significant. But yeah, looks good to me. So I'll now do a full render, give you guys a quick look, and we'll wrap this up. Okay, so this is the final render. Obviously I could keep going with this, keep tweaking stuff and thicknesses and densities and stuff like that, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm pretty happy with this. Like, we have some really nice peach fuzz happening on the shoulder here. With more AA samples, these will be more visible and cleaner. And you can see them up here on the forehead. The eyelashes are looking pretty good. The beard's looking the way I wanted it to. Yeah, but that's basically it. So I'll do some more renders of these to showcase them for the tutorial itself, just so you can see it from different angles and things like that. I may make a couple more tweaks depending on, because the density of their hair might not look correct from a profile view, so I may make some other tweaks, but basically this is what you've seen here is my process, the process that I've come up with for creating pretty decent looking hair for characters. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this and got something out of it, and looking forward to see what you guys come up with. Thanks.